Hello everyone, SOAPBOX here, and this is everything you need to know about the new villager and food tier system here in Aska. Probably. I'm joined today by Kyle, a completely useless tier 1 villager who has been outcast to this isolated outpost. Don't ask why, and do not make eye contact with Kyle. He knows what he did. To start off, for anyone who doesn't know, Aska's animal husbandry update introduced a new happiness system overhaul. It's a little complicated and was received with mixed feelings amongst the community, with opinions ranging from bad to those who praise the introduction of more complex systems into the game, while still asking for balance though. In this video, I plan to go over what are the new tier mechanics, how do they work, my best tips for keeping everyone fed correctly, and how would I suggest to improve them. Then at the end there will be a bonus section with all discoverable food recipes in the game, because that is one of my most requested videos, so I'm finally getting that off my list. And if you do things differently in your game and they work for you, let us know in the comments, share the wisdom. Also, one last thing before I kick any of this off, big fat disclaimer time, because this game is early access and I do expect more balancing to this system probably the day after releasing this video, if past experience has taught me anything. So, to explain the happiness and tier system in the simplest way possible, villagers now fall into a tier based on their highest skill proficiency. These tiers range from 1 to 4, with 1 being the lowest and 4 currently being the highest. In my testing and asking around my Discord, it seems that the breakpoints are as follows. Tier 1, skill 0 to 23. Tier 2, skill 24 to 48. Tier 3, skill 49 to 73. And Tier 4, 74 plus. Let me know if you see anything different, because there are a few edge cases, and these numbers make my soul itch. Food now also falls into tiers 1 through 4 based on their complexity. And I do plan to go over this at the end of the video using this graphic. It's a bit complicated right now, just ignore it, we'll switch to an easier one. Just as a general rule of thumb, this is how food is split into those tiers. So, tier 1 food includes raw and cooked meat and raw and cooked vegetables. A really fast way to understand this tier is anything you find on the floor or cook on the barbecue. Tier 2 foods, again as a general rule of thumb, includes all soup recipes which are made at the cooking house using 4 raw ingredients and 4 units of water. There are a few bonus but not very efficient tier 2 recipes which we'll go over at the end of this video. Tier 3 foods include all stew recipes which are made in the exact same way as all of your soup recipes, so those 4 raw ingredients at the cooking house, but this time with only 2 units of water, not 4, and they are a 1-to-1 match, so for every soup recipe you have, there will be a stew recipe equivalent. This makes stews half as efficient as soups because you get half the amount of product from the same number of ingredients, except for water, but the trade-off is that they are a tier higher and slightly more filling. White cheese as well as sweet pies also fall into tier 3, so bear that in mind. And finally, tier 4 foods include all remaining pies and the other 2 types of cheese. And again, we're going to go over all of this using my overly engineered tier list here at the end of the video. We'll go through it one by one so you can really knuckle down and get all of these recipes learned. Okay, so that covers the what behind the mechanics. Now let's cover how do they work. How does this translate into gameplay, and how should you prepare to manage your food production? And I thought it would be fun to demonstrate this with a little experiment to see it in action, because there's still one big thing you should know ahead of everything. So back to Kyle. Hello Kyle. Again, Kyle is my useless tier 1 villager. Being a tier 1 villager means that Kyle will prefer to eat raw or cooked vegetables and meat. So I've set up his outpost with the following items in storage: 10 raw berries, which are tier 1, 5 cooked onions and 5 cooked meat, which are also tier 1. 1 meat soup, which is tier 2, 1 meat stew, which is tier 3, and finally 1 warrior or meat pie, which is tier 4. Who on earth was ringing that bell? It's really distracting. To run this experiment, we're basically going to wait for Kyle to wake up and just see what he chooses to eat. Then we'll reload, remove that food item, and then see what he chooses to eat. Okay, so he is up, he is hungry. What's for breakfast, Kyle? Yes, good morning. What are you having for breakfast? Kyle? Kyle, I'm trying to do something. Okay, so Kyle wasn't hungry, so I had to wait a bit. Now let's see what he eats. Come on, Kyle, you're embarrassing me in front of the internet. Looks like Kyle grabbed himself some cooked meat. Good choice, Kyle. Out of all the tier 1 options, cooked meat is the most filling. So now let's reload, and this time we're going to remove the cooked meat. No joy for you, Kyle. Not after what you did. Okay, here he comes, and this time, what does he eat? Cooked onions. Delicious. Less filling than cooked meat, but more filling than anything that's raw. Alright, I've removed the cooked meat and the cooked onions, which leaves Kyle with just the berries as the tier 1 option. Is he going to eat them? Yay! Yep, just as you would expect, there is no cooked food left, so Kyle is now choosing to eat raw vegetables, or in this case, raw fruit. And wow, he took all 10 of them. Alright, now this is the bit I want you all to pay close attention to, because it is a big issue, in my opinion. So we've removed the cooked meat, the cooked onion, and the raw berries, leaving only 1 meat soup, 1 meat stew, and 1 meat pie. Go ahead, pause the video, write down in the comments really quickly, what do you think he's gonna eat? You would expect Kyle to go ahead and grab the tier 2 food, right? There's no tier 1 food, what's 1 higher than 1? It's 2, what's tier 2? Soup, that's what you would think. No, you silly goose, not the tier 2 soup, which is the next highest tier of food and readily available to him. Why would you think that? Are you counting properly? No, he's going to eat the bloody pie. Okay, so that whole experiment was done just as a way to demonstrate that currently, as of the recording of this video, villagers will behave properly when looking for their tier of food, but if they do not have access to anything of their tier, they will instead eat the highest bloody tier food, and that to me is bloody madness, and why I maintain that yes, added depth and complexity is good for the game, but this system needs tweaks because this makes no sense. If Kyle here doesn't have access to cooked meat or cooked vegetables or raw vegetables, he should have some soup, which is the next highest tier, not a bloody pie, which is pretty darn hard to make, by the way, when starting out, and you're not going to have in abundance. And when the tier 1 villagers start eating those tier 4 pies or cheese or whatever it is you're making, there's going to be less available for your higher skilled villagers, and that's going to cause a cascading happiness crash. To repackage this behavior in another way, imagine Kyle here is driving around in his 1978 Ford Pinto when suddenly he runs out of gas. Rather than hopping into a nearby 2002 Pontiac Aztek, which some would consider the next best thing, he instead steals a Ferrari. Anyway, enough of Kyle, time to head back to town. But first, let me just do this. Oh, don't feel sorry for him. He knows what he did. Next, let's talk about my best tips. What can you do to keep your food production fulfilling all your needs for your various tiers of villagers? And of course, my very first suggestion is just oversupply. Have your farmers, have your gatherers, have your hunters, have your cooking huts just working around the clock 24/7. But I know that is just my experience talking and a huge ask for new players, so rather than just telling you to do it properly, just make a lot of food. That's kind of silly. Let's instead look at it holistically. What can you do as a new player? How can you prepare for this? Let's take a little bit of a deeper dive. Starting out, my first suggestion is get a fishing hut or a hunter's hut up and running, hunting food or fishing for fish, and then turn that into cooked food. Get a barbecue pit up and running and just barbecue all the bloody meat you can find, because as you saw in our little experiment, cooked meat is the preference of your tier 1 villagers because it is the most filling option. So if you remember, Kyle, he took 2 pieces of cooked meat, but when denied access to that meat, he instead took all 5 cooked onions or all 10 raw berries. But not only is cooked meat the most filling option of your tier 1 foods, it also has a second, arguably more important benefit, and that is cooked meat can still be used by the cooking house in their recipes. It doesn't have to be raw meat. So cooking your meat just makes it available for your tier 1 villagers to eat, but also it stays available to your cooking house for anything tiers 2, 3 and 4 as well. The downside of this, of course, is you now have to have a barbecuer. Whether you have 1 or 2 is up to you, but the point is you are stuck with a barbecuer. And at first I was looking for a way out of that, and I do have some suggestions for that, but I'm also coming to terms with the fact that this is probably just an intended part of the game, because when you get new villagers, they're tier 1, they're gonna want to have that basic meat. And also jobs like the market worker or the warehouse worker, they don't level up. So again, they are going to stay tier 1 if that's what they took the jobs as, so you're always going to want to have access to this basic cooked food, and the cooked version of these foods is much better than vegetables. It's better for a villager to have 2 slices of meat versus taking 10 berries or 10 cabbages. That's going to take away those resources from your cooking hut and therefore away from your tier 2, 3, 4 villagers. You know, that's kind of like how I look at this. So yes, it sucks that we all probably have to have a barbecuer, at least in this scenario, but to say it again, just as a reminder, cooked food, cooked meat can still be used in the cooking house, so you're not losing these resources per se. Sure, some are going to be eaten, but they're going to be eaten instead of these vegetables, and the ones that don't get eaten are still, again, fully accessible for cooking stews, pies, and the other one, soups. That one. Soup, stews, and pies. And speaking about tiers 2 and 3, especially right now, I would stick with meat and fish, soups and stews. Don't do the weird ones. You know, just because you can make scrambled egg and poached eggs doesn't mean you should. Save those eggs for your pies. Similarly, I would avoid making that white cheese, at least at the beginning. If you want to make it, you know, in your end game, knock yourself out. But at the beginning, avoid making the tier 3 cheese. You want to save that milk for your tier 4 cheese. Meat and fish soups and stews are perfectly filling, really easy to make. Those are the ones I would focus on. Occasionally, I would like to throw in maybe a berry compote, because in the spring or summer, you're going to have thousands upon thousands of blueberries. That is perfectly fine too. And if you find yourself with a really, really healthy farming community, like my Blauber Acre farming outpost here, God, I love this place. It's perfectly fine to have some vegetable soups thrown in. It's not wrong to offer your villagers a choice, but it is wrong to sort of like put all your eggs in one basket, especially if that basket is full of poached eggs. Don't make poached eggs, please, just don't. Really, you just have to look at your farms. What are you producing? Always try to use your vegetables in the most efficient way. Cook them into meals. Avoid having your tier 1 villagers gorge on them. Like, they will gorge on them. You saw Kyle. That's one guy. Imagine a village full of those bastards. And when it comes to tier 4, just follow what you did in tiers 2 and 3. Make those meat or fish pies. You should have plenty of eggs for them now, because, right, you didn't use them all on poached eggs or scrambled eggs. You listened to Sabaki, right? You did the normal thing. You didn't do the weird ones. And the addition of cheese, although it does take a long time to sort of like set up using smilk and all that and having to wait for rain and mushrooms and whatnot, the addition of cheese just takes the pressure off the need for pies. So to recap tiers 1 through 4, as I am doing it in my 9 Realms playthrough, tier 1, cooked meat and fish, and this one is not capped in any way, so when it comes to raw meat, I'm cooking everything. For tier 2, I'm making meat and fish soup. For tier 3, meat and fish stew, and then for tier 4, meat or warrior and fish pies. And of course, I'm making cheese as well, just to take the pressure off my need for pies, because in the end game, you do need a lot of eggs for pies, and they are currently a finite resource. Finite in the sense of they are finite per year and respawn in the next year. So making cheese, again, just takes the pressure off the need for pies. And I know that sounds super, super basic. Just make meat and fish soup. I know that sounds super, super basic, but at this stage in this update, that is just the best way to go about it, because although they have added different tiers to different types of food, they haven't added things like longer lasting buffs or additional benefits for making different types of food. So although you can make cabbage soup and scrambled eggs and things like that, there really is no need to do that, because protein-based meals are much more filling than their vegetable-only counterparts. And the whole point is you want to feed these villagers in the most efficient way. You want to feed them using the least amount of resources so they get back back to work and you can enjoy the rest of the game. And yes, of course, there is always going to be that edge case, that exception to the rule, like my farming outpost here. It sustains itself entirely on vegetable soups and stews. Why? Because it's a farming outpost. It has access to an absolute metric ton of vegetables year round, and the only meat nearby is a bear, and I'm not going to have my farmers deal with a bear. Another exception I make, and this is just me, I like making the sweet pie because I like the model. It just looks really, really yummy, doesn't it? And I really do hope this changes in the future, because I would like to be incentivized to provide a variety of food for my villagers. I would like to be incentivized to make that cabbage soup, or make that beet stew, or make those scrambled eggs. And I'll explain how and why in a bit. But for now, for the current patch of the game, just stick to those meat or fish soups, stews, and pies, supplement with cheese, and you'll be fine. 99 times out of 100. So yeah, that's my tier 1 through 4. How I do it, again, let us know down in the comments what you do. I want to quickly mention a few recipes to avoid like the plague, and I'll explain why. This section is going to be really, really quick. First of all, don't make scrambled or poached eggs. Save those eggs for your pies. I would also avoid making anything that uses mushrooms. In fact, go into your cooking hut and turn off mushrooms on the priority list, because remember, you want to save these for your cheese. Early in the game, sure, knock yourself out, eat mushrooms to your heart content.
Enjoy the trips you get with them. Go see the things that no one else can see.
Go taste the flavors that no one else can taste.
But as you start progressing further into the game, turn it off. Do not make mushroom soups. Do not make mushroom stews. Keep your mushrooms for the cheeses. I would also personally recommend that you don't barbecue your vegetables. Although you can, and they are more filling than your raw vegetables, you should be focusing on meat. And that's really it. That's my hard and fast. Again, what I like about Aska is you can absolutely play this game the way you want. That's just how I want to play the game. That's how I have decided food production is efficient for me. Again, please let everyone know in the comments if you do it differently, because, you know, I'm not a min-maxer by any stretch. I'd really, really welcome your suggestions. Okay, one last tip before we get into the next section of this video. If you want to move away from having to feed your villagers cooked meat or vegetables, or you simply don't want to have to manage 1 to however many barbecue pits roasting meat, then you're obviously going to want to level everyone to at least tier 2 so that they prefer soups, stews, etc. So the best way I found to get villagers to tier 2 is by building and assigning a shaman to the air runestone, which will give all of your villagers that 3-star archery proficiency. Then you can assign all your tier 1 villagers to the archery range as they come in, and in about 8 to 10 hours, a single shift really, they will have leveled to at least 25 in archery, and therefore now be a tier 2 villager, even if you reassign them to a warehouse or a market or somewhere that's not going to level their skills in any way. It's a little bit of a time investment, but the trade-off is obviously being able to completely ignore the need for tier 1 food and instead focus more on soups, which is a much more efficient way of feeding your villagers. All right, last thing I want to cover before we get into, you know, all the recipes that I've been able to discover, and I'm pretty sure I've got all of them. But what would I do to improve upon or build upon this system? Well, honestly, I would just remove the relationship between food tiers and villager tiers, because it is a forced system from the devs when it comes to rewarding your villagers for gaining experience and reaching those higher tiers, because there's no economy in the game, there's no currency in the game in which we would normally be expected to pay higher skilled villagers a higher wage. So the devs created this villager and food tier system to simulate that as a villager grows in their trade, they develop a sort of pretentious, their word, not mine, but a sort of pretentious attitude in which they feel that eating soup or berries or whatever is unfair and that they deserve better, which they do, don't get me wrong, but food? Really? This is how we're going to approach it? We're going to give higher skilled villagers better food? And that's where this whole idea, to me, kind of unravels, because it doesn't make sense when you look at it for more than just a few seconds, because there are viable alternatives. So right off the bat, instead of higher tier villagers suddenly having dietary demands, I would instead create relationships between the different villager tiers and things like better tools, better weapons, better armor, better clothes, better housing, better beds, better everything. Down the line, this can be expanded upon by introducing things like mead halls or jewelry even. Look at it this way. A master blacksmith is going to be way more pissed off at you because they're still being forced to use a wooden hammer 9 years into their career over not having a steak pie for breakfast. A master weaver is going to be more pissed off at you that they're still wearing flimsy bloody clothing with holes in rather than a nice warm tunic, you know? As a concept, I do like having food tiers based on the complexity of the recipe being made, so I would keep the food tier structure but just have higher tier foods offer bigger, longer lasting buffs, and those buffs should last at least 8 in-game hours. If you wanted to have a more impactful food system, then I would just borrow from the new workplace dyeing mechanic system. You know, that system where you can go into a workplace and tell your villagers what color to dye their outfits. You could just have like an optional thing like that. I'll say that again. Optional, where you just assign that workplace a specific type of food, and then that way your warriors will always get the strength increasing foods, your archers will always get the agility increasing foods, and all your other workers at all the other stations can just get food that's tailored to them. And that would be the incentive for us to go and make the variety of foods that we have in the game that honestly we just ignore 80% of it. Even with the tier system, I know before the tier system we only used to feed our villagers meat soup. That was the most efficient thing, but even now, like, we're just feeding them maybe 3 or 4 extra things, and we have all these other recipes that are just going ignored. And again, this is just me being an armchair dev for 5 minutes, coming up with ideas that I think just fit better thematically. And you may agree with it, you may not agree with it, you may have your own armchair dev thoughts behind this system. And if you do, share them in the comments because, okay, I just want to get to the last part of the video. Recipes. Let's talk recipes. Okay, enough of the flashy whiz-bangery. Let's go through each of the 4 tiers of food, all the food in them, and how to discover any new recipes that aren't pre-learned. And so this is what the cooking house looks like once you have unlocked all the recipes. Probably, again, I did try some weird ones. I did try cheese pie or meat and cheese pie, and they just came back with spoiled food. So I do think this is everything. So let's start with tier 1, and I would actually go a little bit further and say tier 1 is technically split into 2 with your raw and wriggling side and your barbecue side. So starting with the raw side, literally everything you can harvest or gather can be eaten raw. So we are talking about your raw red meat and your raw fish meat and your raw snot wallets, as well as all your fruit and vegetables. So beetroot, cabbage, carrot, garlic, onion, mushroom, berries, and eggs can all be eaten raw. Then the other side of the tier 1 would be things that you can make in the barbecue. So cooked red meat and cooked fish meat, as well as cooked beetroot, cabbage, carrot, onion, and mushroom. Keep in mind though that you cannot barbecue snot wallets, garlic, berries, or eggs. Apparently, who'd have thought that you can't barbecue an egg? Okay, on to the good stuff. Tier 2, recipes that can be cooked at the cooking house. Okay, so the rule of thumb at tier 2 in the cooking house is always use 4 units of water, and let's go through the list. So we'll start with the most filling, and those will be your protein-based soups, which is your meat soup, your fish soup, and your snot wallet soup. Meat and fish soup is made with 1 red meat and 3 raw ingredients, as well as 4 units of water, and snot wallet soup, you just flip them. So you have 3 snot wallets and 1 raw vegetable, and again, 4 units of water. For your vegetarian options, you have beetroot soup, cabbage soup, carrot soup, garlic soup, onion soup, mushroom soup, berries compote, and poached eggs. Don't make poached eggs though. Remember what we talked about, save your eggs for your pies. Although, actually, you know what, you can make it. You can make it this one time. Go ahead, make the poached eggs, get it out your system, and then promise me, save your eggs for your pies. And you can unlock these recipes in one of 2 ways. The first is to simply just use 4 of the same ingredient along with 4 units of water, which I personally find a little easier to do. The other way is to use at least 3 of the same ingredient along with 1 other random raw ingredient except eggs, and again that 4 units of water. Speaking of eggs, when it comes to poached eggs, you must use 3 eggs along with one other ingredient. Do not try to unlock it using 4 eggs because after a recent hotfix, eggs are no longer considered a filler, so they are not registering as that 4th ingredient, and if you try to make poached eggs with 4 eggs, you'll inexplicably make spoiled food. I guess you over-egged your eggs. Similarly, when choosing that 4th ingredient for the previous recipes, again, just avoid using eggs. The final tier 2 recipe is your very generic vegetable soup, which again can be made in 2 ways, either by using 4 totally random ingredients, again not eggs, or by using a max of 2 of the same ingredient, because again, if you use 3 of the same ingredient, like beetroot, you're just going to make beetroot soup. So if you want to unlock vegetable soup, just use 4 random vegetables, or again, a maximum of 2 of the same. Moving on to tier 3, and I know at first glance it seems like a lot, but honestly, this is 80% the same as tier 2. In fact, Editor Bucky, add a quick color overlay. These recipes highlighted here are made in the exact same way as their soup counterparts, but with 2 units of water this time, not 4. So for your protein-based stews, make them in the exact same way as you made your protein-based soups, but with 2 units of water. So for meat and fish stew, 1 red meat, 1 fish meat, and 3 raw vegetables along with 2 units of water. And for your snot wallet stew, 3 snot wallets and 1 raw vegetable. As an aside, really quickly, it took me so long to say snot wallet stew. Just try it really quickly. Pause the video, try it. Try and say snot wallet stew. You know, thank God for editing. And then for your vegetable stews, again, make them in the exact same way as your vegetable soups, only with 2 units of water. So beetroot stew, cabbage stew, carrot stew, garlic jam, onion stew, mushroom stew, berries jam, and scrambled eggs are made with 3 of those specific ingredients, 1 raw vegetarian filler, and again, 2 units of water this time, not 4. For your scrambled eggs, do the same thing as you did with your poached eggs, only use 3, and do not use a 4th egg as a filler. And then for your vegetable stew, again, just any combination of raw veggies, 2 of the same maximum though, otherwise again, you're just going to make that specific vegetable soup. Some new additions that did not carry over from tier 2 would be your sweet pie and your forager's pie. To make these, you are going to have to upgrade your cooking hut to the cooking house so you have access to the oven, and you can unlock these recipes by using 4 eggs, which of course you've saved, right, because you haven't been making poached or scrambled eggs, 4 eggs, 4 berries, and 1 unit of water. For your forager's pie, use 4 eggs, any 4 vegetables, and 1 unit of water as well. And then the last tier 3 recipe is your white cheese, which is made at the new cheese maker. And to unlock this, use 4 grey mushrooms along with 4 units of smilk. Bloody smilk, honestly, devs. And lastly, tier 4, quite easy in comparison to the other tiers. There's only 5 recipes here, 3 pies and 2 cheeses. For pies, you have your warrior's pie, which is made using 4 eggs, 4 red meat, and 1 water. Your hunter's pie, which is made with 4 eggs, 1 meat, either fish or red meat, and 3 raw vegetables, along with 1 unit of water. And then lastly, your fish pie, which is 4 eggs, 4 fish meat, and that 1 unit of water. And then when it comes to cheese, or smeeze, as we like to call it, your blue cheese is made using 4 of the regular mushrooms, along with 4 units of smilk. And your yellow cheese is made with, you guessed it, 4 yellow mushrooms, and again, 4 units of smilk. Devs, stop making me say smilk. And that's about it for the food and villager tier system here in Aska. Overall, I do enjoy having villager tiers in the game. I think it makes sense for the needs of your villagers to change and to evolve as they grow in skill. I'm not sold on food being the answer though, being the relationship link between villager tiers. I think it makes more sense for villagers to want better clothing, better tools, better housing, etc. So I do hope the devs listen to some of the feedback from the community, because I'm not the only one saying this, and I do hope that they do listen to the feedback and they make a few tweaks or balances to the system, or at least build from this foundation to make it a little bit more enjoyable. But yeah, overall, I do enjoy having the villager tiers in the game. I do enjoy having that added level of complexity. And I am excited to see where this system, or where systems like this, will go in the future. But thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed your time here, then please consider grabbing a sub, dropping a like or leaving a comment, catch up on one of my other adventures using one of the links on screen right now, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheerio.